Earlier today, a source with direct knowledge of the situation gave NBC News the biggest peek yet into what we should expect from Trump's New York hush money trial next week. A potential witness list. But let me back up. 4 days before Election Day, in 2016, the Wall Street Journal published this explosive story. National Enquirer shielded Donald Trump from Playboy model's affair allegation. It was what is known in the tabloid world as a catch-and-kill scheme. Trump had an affair with the Playboy model named Karen McDougal. When Trump ran for president, McDougal tried to sell that story to the press. So the National Enquirer bought the story from McDougal, and then they killed it. And this is no longer just the stuff of allegation. In 2018, the National Enquirer's parent company entered into a non-prosecution agreement with prosecutors in New York. The tabloid admitted the whole scheme in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Around the time that was happening, the Wall Street Journal had another scoop. David Pecker, the CEO of the National Enquirer, also had an immunity deal with prosecutors. He was also spilling the beans. So knowing all of that background, when NBC got this potential witness list today for Trump's hush money trial, these names jumped out at me: Karen McDougal and David Pecker. They are on the list, as well as the man who was the editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer at the time of that catch-and-kill scheme, Dylan Howard. Now, the hush money at the center of Monday's trial is not the hush money the National Enquirer paid Karen McDougal to kill her story. The hush money at the center of Monday's trial is the money paid to adult film star Stephanie Clifford, who you probably know better by the stage name Stormy Daniels. But the contours of these cases are very, very similar. Daniels, like McDougal, was ready to go public with her story and was paid to stay silent. And what's more, both of these payments, the money for Karen McDougal and the money for Stormy Daniels, those payments were made in the lead up to the 2016 election. And that could be key here. Because one of the central things that District Attorney Alvin Bragg will have to prove in this case is why Donald Trump did what he did, why he arranged those payments to Stormy Daniels. Having Karen McDougal and David Pecker and Dylan Howard on the witness stand explaining the Karen McDougal hush money case, explaining why the National Enquirer was catching and killing stories that could be bad for Donald Trump in the lead up to the presidential election. Well, that could really help illustrate Trump's intent in a very similar case, the Stormy Daniels case. To that end, also on the potential witness list is Keith Davidson. Davidson was the attorney for both Karen McDougal, as she negotiated her payment from the National Enquirer, and he was the attorney for Stormy Daniels, as she negotiated her payment to stay quiet. And I am sure Mr. Davidson has plenty to say about what he believes motivated the silencing of his two clients' stories. Now, if you recall, the reason D.A. Bragg has to prove the why here is because the way he structured the charges against Trump here is not just one singular crime. Bragg has charged Trump with a misdemeanor, the falsifying of business records. But Bragg has elevated that charge to a felony by alleging that Trump falsified those business records in service of committing another larger crime. Now, D.A. Bragg has not yet revealed what that second larger crime is, but it is likely something like tax fraud or a state or federal election crime. Because Stormy Daniels' story wasn't just killed on some random date. It wasn't killed while Donald Trump was a businessman or while he was hosting The Apprentice. Stormy Daniels' story was killed the month before the 2016 general election, and days after the Access Hollywood tape was made public. That's the tape where Trump said he liked to grab women by the you-know-what. A story about Trump allegedly having an affair with an adult film star just months after his own wife had given birth to their son, paying to make that story go away just before the election, certainly feels a lot like a campaign expense, or at least an in-kind donation. So that is why Trump's knowledge and intent are so important here, and why having witnesses like Karen McDougal and David Pecker and Dylan Howard and Keith Davidson could be so essential. What Trump knew about that reimbursement system and when he knew it will also be central to the case. which is what makes these less recognizable names also very interesting. Jeffrey McConney and Madeleine Westerhout. McConney was the former controller for the Trump Organization. He would have had access and maybe even needed to approve the payments to Michael Cohen, which were all classified as payments for legal services. Westerhout was Trump's Oval Office secretary during the period when Cohen was being reimbursed by Trump. And because Trump was doing all of this reimbursing while he was in the White House as the president, she would have had a front row seat. And that's not even the whole potential witness list. Joining me now to discuss are MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and Ankush Khardori, a former federal prosecutor and current senior writer at Politico magazine. Thank you both for being here. Lisa, I was very interested in this potential witness list, and I'm sure you were even more interested and more informed, given your sort of following of this case and your deep legal expertise. Who among those names stuck out to you as being sort of essential to the prosecution's case here?
People are going to be talking when this trial gets underway about Madeleine Westerhout. And that's because when Donald Trump engaged in his repayment of Michael Cohen, there were multiple checks sent to Cohen. He didn't repay him in one lump sum. He repaid him over a series of months. 6 of the checks, at least, that were sent to Michael Cohen were signed by Donald J. Trump in his distinctive Sharpie scrawl.
Yes.
And at a time when he was president of the United States. So you have to ask yourself, where was Donald Trump when he signed those checks? And does he have a checkbook in the Resolute desk? No. The way that they are formulated, you can see they are computerized. They were generated from some business. Somebody had to have presented him with those checks to sign. And that's where Madeleine Westerhout comes in. She was also, as Bob Woodward says, Trump's gatekeeper. She was the key. If you wanted to communicate with Trump, you had to go through her. So expect the prosecution potentially to show her other evidence of the scheme to conceal the payments through these manufactured legal invoices. Because if someone wanted to send Trump an email, we know Trump doesn't email.
Yep.
Someone wanted to send him a text, we know he doesn't text. And if they wanted to call him, who would have placed that call? The Oval Office secretary, Alex.
So fascinating. Ankush, you have made a point in Politico, and I think it's well taken, especially for those of us on the outside of the legal profession, that Michael Cohen is more of a problematic witness than I think perhaps the layman understands. Can you elaborate on what you think his greatest weaknesses are and whether any of them are shored up by the witness list that we have seen today?
Yeah, so it's not unusual for cooperators in prominent criminal cases to have sordid pasts, their own criminal history. Maybe they lied to prosecutors, but now they've sort of seen the light. And they stop lying once they start working with the government and ideally are sort of on the right path, on the straight and narrow. Michael Cohen has lied to every branch of the federal government over the last few years. He lied to Justice Department prosecutors when he was trying to ask them to give him a break after he pled guilty in the Southern District of New York. He lied to Congress, and he admitted to lying to Congress and pled guilty to doing that. And he lied to at least one judge, probably the judge who took his guilty plea on the tax charges back in 2018, because he has since claimed that he pled guilty under duress and that he didn't mean it. He didn't commit those crimes. So that's a lot of lying for someone who's going to be a key witness. And Cohen also has a couple of other elements of sort of unusual baggage. I mean, he has a career now, a media career, that he has constructed off the back of his connection to Donald Trump and, frankly, his vendetta against Donald Trump. Both of those things are going to be issues for his credibility that I'm sure Trump's lawyers will bring out. But, you know, Lisa is exactly right. I mean, the other witnesses on this list could be quite significant, and I'm sure the DA's office will be looking to them to try to shore up Cohen's testimony, corroborate it, or plug in gaps. The most obvious, for instance, just with the assistant that Lisa was talking about, is, you know, she may have been around conversations in which he could have overheard Trump talking about his knowledge of the scheme, his motive, that sort of thing. And I don't want to speculate too far, but that's sort of what we're seeing with this witness list. So the DA's office perhaps putting some people on the sort of board who might be able to fill in pieces of evidence that other people might not be able to do so well.
Plugging the holes, Lisa.
Well, when Ankush was talking about the assistant, and it reminded me that in the statement of facts that accompanies the indictment, there is a single paragraph that jumps out at me every time I read it. And it's about the fact that in 2017, Cohen and Trump allegedly met in the Oval Office to cement this repayment scheme. And I have been thinking to myself for months, who is going to corroborate that? If Michael Cohen is a problematic witness, as Ankush has just postulated. Who's going to be that person? Well, we now have one possibility, that it's Madeleine Westerhout, because there's no one else on that witness list who would have been in the White House at that time.
Ankush, I do wonder, you know, as much as it seems quite evident that D.A. Bragg has spent quite a bit of time trying to shore up potential weaknesses, you point out in your piece today that Trump's lawyers could pursue a sort of, I don't know, is it novel, a different strategy for trying to effectively lower the sentence here by convincing, by going only for a misdemeanor charge here, by effectively admitting guilt to just a misdemeanor to take the felony off the table. Can you explain that theory a little bit more fully?
Yeah, no, it's an unorthodox theory, I'm sure, to most people who are hearing it. But essentially, you know, any time that there is a charged offense that is sort of a high-level felony offense that has a lesser included offense in it, so in this case, the misdemeanor is falsifying business records, and as you said at the top, it has been escalated to a felony through the allegation that the falsification of the records was done to aid or conceal another crime. So what defendants in these kinds of odd situations can do, if they are concerned that the jury may be reluctant to quit the defendant, but may have some concerns about the strength of the case, they can ask the judge in New York before the case goes to the jury to instruct the jurors that they can convict the defendant on the lesser, in this case, misdemeanor offenses rather than top offenses. And the benefit of doing that for a criminal defendant is to avoid a situation where the jurors are just stuck with the most, the strongest option and are forced to effectively convict on the felony. Forced, I'm just putting that in quotes. That would be the way the defendant would see it. And instead give them sort of a compromise option, which would be misdemeanors in this instance.
What happened in Arizona? That question was top of mind for most Americans this week, including Trump whisperer Steve Bannon. Yes, that Steve Bannon, that guy, appeared just as confused as the rest of us about the Arizona Supreme Court's decision to uphold a Civil War-era abortion ban, something that conservative court was only able to do because Donald Trump's hand-picked Supreme Court justices overturned the constitutional right to an abortion 2 years ago. Nevertheless, Bannon posed a question. What's happening there? And conservatives have had a really hard time answering it. Fox News thinks the Democrats are really at fault here.
And you know what? Arizona's governor is a Democrat. The state's attorney general is a Democrat. The state legislature is almost evenly divided. If Democrats, you want to get rid of the law, well, you have a chance right now to get rid of it. And I would advise you, get rid of it.
Get rid of it, Democrats. Democrats in Arizona already tried to do that twice this year, well before this week's ruling, and the Republican majority shut them down. Then yesterday, when Arizona Democrats tried once more to repeal the 1864 abortion ban, who stood in their way? Republicans. Again. So Republicans are sort of saying one thing and mostly doing another here, rendering their position on all of this largely incoherent. Just yesterday, Donald Trump touted the end of Roe v. Wade, but then seemingly opened the door to voter-led initiatives to enshrine abortion access in state constitutions. He said, "The will of the people. This is what I've been saying. It's a perfect system. So for 52 years, people have wanted to end Roe v. Wade and get it back to the states. We did. It was an incredible achievement. We did that. And now the states have it, and the states are putting out what they want. It's the will of the people." It's sort of even more incoherent when you hear him say it. We're going to talk about that now with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, Democrat from the great state of Washington and chair of the House Progressive Caucus. Congresswoman Jayapal, thank you for joining me here tonight. We got a lot to talk about. Do you think Republicans, conservatives, can just say the phrase, will of the people, and say it enough times at such a volume that people forget about the actions they've actually taken to get this outcome?
Hey, Alex, it's great to be with you. No, I don't think they can do that. And I think what you're seeing is the mess, the pigsty that they've gotten themselves into. Because here's the thing. Everybody knows, because Donald Trump bragged about it and will continue to brag about it, that he is the one who, quote, proudly takes responsibility for ending Roe. And so he has said that. He has endorsed a nationwide abortion ban. By the way, the MAGA Republicans in the House put a nationwide abortion ban into the study conference bill that is supported by 100% of Republican leadership and 80% of the Republican conference. And so I think that what you have to understand here is that the reason they're doing all of these machinations and trying to run around in circles to say that they didn't say what they did say, but maybe they kind of said what they said that they didn't say, is because they know they are losing on this issue. They know that Republicans, Democrats, and independents across the country want to preserve the ability for a pregnant person to make choices about their own bodies. And what the states are doing now, Florida, Arizona, 25 million people, 1 in 3 women of reproductive age, live in states that have either banned abortion or partially and severely restricted abortion or banned abortion, depending on how you want to talk about it. So they know this is deeply unpopular, and Donald Trump is the one who made it happen. And I think they can run around and say whatever they want, but the reality is we just need to keep showing that clip of exactly as you did, of Donald Trump and other Republicans saying that they were the ones who ended Roe v. Wade. And they are the ones who have caused this tremendous chaos and real pain for millions of women across this country who now not only don't have the right to abortion, by the way, but also the Republicans are really about eliminating all reproductive health care for women, as you saw with the IVF decision. And so contraception is also, by the way, very much a part of their plan. And I think that they understand what a mess they're in now, because this is not popular. It is not right, and it is not popular.
I mean, it's also ironic that all of a sudden the Republican Party, which has embraced such anti-democratic tactics to stay in power, is now heralding how important it is to have the will of the people decide matters of great, state-level import, like abortion, reproductive freedom. I mean, it also, by embracing, democracy, it forecloses the sort of mechanisms by which they've stayed in power, which is, legislative chicanery and judicial, installing conservatives on benches across the country to rule against the will of the people. And I wonder if you think that has dawned on Republicans as their leaders, get behind the notion of the will of the people.
Look, you're trying to be logical about this, as if they should all, actually do what they say and say what they do. They have no consistency at all. They flip positions on a dime, and they do it because they're a cult of Donald Trump. And whatever Donald Trump says or believes one day is what the entire Republican Party then starts to parrot. And they have no interest in democracy. If they did, they would not block the passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They would not go into states and fundamentally restrict the rights of Americans to be at the polls and vote. But that is what they've done over and over again. I don't necessarily think we should even get distracted by that, because abortion is the issue. Women are the issue here. And what we know is that what they're doing is deeply unpopular. The chaos they've thrown the country into with the MAGA Supreme Court, with Donald Trump proudly pushing and claiming responsibility for ending Roe, that is really the thing that we're dealing with now. And I think that we will once again show that the will of the people will be on the ballot with the Arizona abortion rights amendment, other states across the country that are putting this on the ballot. And I do believe it will turn out a tremendous number of people, and we will codify those laws in states. But we just have to be clear that if Donald Trump gets back in, if Republicans keep control of the House and the Senate, they will continue to push forward a nationwide abortion ban, because that's what they've always wanted, whether they say it now or not.
Do you think this issue is the whole ballgame in the 2024 election?
I think it is a major piece of the ballgame. Absolutely. We are getting ready at the Progressive Caucus to also roll out what we call our proposition agenda. I hope I can come back on when we've rolled it out. But that is also important. Lowering costs, raising wages for Americans so they don't feel the squeeze, so they feel like government is on their side, deal with housing, deal with childcare. These are also going to be a big part of it. But certainly abortion is going to be a major factor in the election. And Republicans know that they are on the wrong side of it. Thank you, Donald Trump, for causing all of this chaos for millions of women across this country.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.